Welcome back to 8 Cubes. I'm KMBest. He's Lamby series. I have glasses on. He doesn't. That's how you can tell us apart. We are going to start with Drax, the new card coming out on Tuesday. It is an end of turn card, which is quite interesting in this context. Drax is a 3/4 end of turn. If a opponent play a card that is bigger than Drax, more power than Drax, Drax will gain +3 power and move to that card's location if he would be winning that card's location. So he's like a sort of another pseudo Captain Marvel. They've played around in this space before, most famously with, of course, Zombie Captain Marvel, but we are going to see another bit of a card that is playing around in the Captain Marvel space with Drax. He is, I think, the card coming out that isn't Star-Lord that I was the most excited for this season. I look at him and I see like a legitimately good potential card that is just going to be a very solid, like, oh, I have a free amount of power in this lane, and anyone playing big stuff is going to feel really bad about it. I felt good about this card when it was going to be like my anti-ramp tool, but now we're entering a meta game where people are playing a lot of Star-Lord stuff, a lot of multiple big guys on the final turn of the game. I do think he's notably worse against that than he is against a ramp deck. What do you think about this card generally? What spots might it go into? I was looking at maybe like an Aurora list with him. That kind of stuff seems kind of interesting to me since you're distributing a lot of power across the board, and then you get like a pseudo Captain Marvel effect as well to make sure that power goes where you need it. I'm interested in this guy. I think that he's going to be a pretty interesting card and potentially a very good one.
Yeah, when I looked at the card, okay, firstly, when I look at the card, my impression of Drax from the movie is that he looks like a big idiot, right? But like this card looks pretty cool. So, but anyway, yeah, I think this card is quite powerful. He can go in most. Honestly, I think he can go in quite a few mid-range decks because firstly, 3/4 base. I assume this card will easily be like it'll probably get to proc its effect like twice, right? So, the interesting thing about this card is that you kind of have to be losing a little bit initially, right? Because your opponent needs to play bigger cards than you to trigger the effect, and then it will move. But I don't think it's gonna be that much of a problem. The thing about this card is that I think you don't want it to move that often because the thing about moving is that this is moving based on your opponent, right? When it's moving based on your opponent, they kind of have a bit of control of how they want it to pan out. Like they can kind of like throw a location. It's a bit more difficult because it moves to the lane with the biggest power. But like I feel like leaving the movement part in the hands of your opponent was always a bit iffy when it comes to Marvel Snap cards. Like you just remember the one of the first few, which is like Silk, right? Like you would always be so afraid on turn 8. Like this 8-cuber goes down to whether the Silk jumps here or not. It's a bit like that, but obviously not as crazy. So very interested to see how this card pans out. But I do think it's quite powerful. I do think it's a big ball of stats for like a relatively low cost.
Yeah. In as much as this is a fake Captain Marvel, it gets way closer to being real Captain Marvel. It isn't, but it gets way closer than other previous fake Captain Marvels. And I guess the biggest question for me is how much is left on the table? Like this card would be clearly busted if it gained Captain Marvel text. It would be one of the strongest possible things. So how far off from that are we? That's the biggest question.
I think it's very far off because the thing about Captain Marvel is that it auto wins that final location, right? Like the thing about winning locations is you don't need to win it by a lot. I always talk about this in the past. You just need to win it by 1 point. So the thing about Captain Marvel is that like it will 100% win you the location if it's meant to. So like that's a lot more less in your opponent's control and more in the flavor in the favor of like the card will automatically just like go to where it's supposed to win and just win it, you know. So this card moving to a location doesn't mean you win the location. That's the biggest difference.
Wait, yeah, it does. It won't move if you're not going to win the location.
Oh, right, it moves at the end of the...
Yeah. Wait a minute. No, bullshit, dude.
Wait. Okay, wait. Rewind that. I just realized, yeah, it moves because it's bigger, right? Oh,
yes, it would only ever, like, it would gain the power anyway. But if it doesn't win the location, it's just going to stay where it is.
Right. Okay, so maybe it's a lot closer to Captain Marvel than I initially thought.
Now we probably got to talk about the thing that everyone seems a little bit mad about. It's Star-Lord Master of the Sun. I don't want to, like... It's hard to have this conversation because I'm trying to thread a thin line here of pointing out what this card is and then what this card isn't. And I don't think many people are willing to exist in that nuance just yet. But Star-Lord Master of the Sun is quite powerful. It is doing things that are strong and will win you the game. In my view, it's a little bit like if Mr. Negative and Black Panther had a baby. Think of it in terms of either of those cards. It is a deck that has a Mr. Negative Jane Foster nut draw. It is a deck that has a Black Panther Arnim Zola nut draw. Those are typically how these decks have played out. As the deck has gotten more and more refined, the deck specifically is one that plays this card on 4 and then copies it usually twice on turn 5 using a combination of Arnim Zola, Grandmaster, and of course, Absorbing Man. Then there are the decks that are turn 5ing this entirely. So you have like a deck that'll skip everything, turn 5, the Star-Lord for 11 energy, and play like MODOK Hela. Those decks are not real. That is Galactus. You have reinvented Galactus. You are going to win 2 cubers when it works. You are going to lose everything when it doesn't. People are going to play Supergiant on you. People are going to play Stardust on you. We're not going to talk about those. We're going to talk about the good versions of the decks, which are doing turn 4, copy on 5. That is really strong, but it's getting a lot of power out of people not knowing what the hell you're supposed to do about it. That's the biggest part of its power right now. Imagine if Mr. Negative came out and we didn't have Mobius. And you don't really have to imagine that because that's how the game was for an extended period of time. That we had to deal with that. That was just like a thing that we had to deal with. And you came up with ways to deal with what was going to be able to be dropped on your head. It's totally doable. This guy's like that, except we have to figure out what it is that we have to do in deck building to beat him. And I have seen so much clever work from high infinite players, but I've never been more impressed with the cleverness of high infinite players than when it comes to beating this guy. I hit infinite and it was just like, all right, I hit infinite. I waited a day, right? You hit infinite too early. You don't get a lot of matchups, right? As soon as I had given the metagame that time, I was getting countered. I was getting countered every matchup I played. It was unbelievable. So we're going to have a couple of specific slots devoted to specific counters. But I just want to sort of set the tone here, which is this card is really strong, but people are looking at the end result. It's like if they released Mr. Negative in 2026, people would be like, oh my God, this is so busted. Oh my God, look at like, how are we supposed to, they have like an Iron Man that's free. It's unbeatable. And like, that's sort of what it feels like people are reacting to Star-Lord like. It's like, oh my God, they have 23 energy. It's like, well, stop them from getting that. It's your job to say that they can't do that, actually. You have to take away that turn 5 multiplication. And there are multiple ways to do it.
Yeah, I think a lot of what I want to talk about is like in like the later topics as well. But I think I'm gonna like agree with this in saying that like I do think that what Star-Lord is doing right now, this Star-Lord is it enables this deck, right? This deck that's supposedly one of the most powerful decks in the game right now. But I do think it's actually super countable and beatable. It's the TLDR is I think this is a very face up deck. This is a deck that's very obvious. And if I were to be playing against this deck, I wouldn't be that upset because I know exactly what's sort of gonna happen. It's like there's like 2 things, more or less.
Yeah, like the basic play pattern, you know what they're gonna do. And if you know what they're gonna do, you should have a pretty massive advantage as long as you're prepared for the matchup. Like just a couple of them that I've seen. There are people in the top 10 right now playing the worst Jean Grey Cosmo decks you've ever seen. It is actually an unwinnable matchup, though. So it doesn't matter how bad the rest of the deck is. It literally doesn't matter. If you get Jean Grey Cosmoed, you cannot win the game. Like, and it is there's just stuff like that with this deck where it's like, if people are prepared for you and they meaningfully understand what your plan is and they disrupt you, especially that turn 5, you are in trouble. You are in massive trouble as the Star-Lord deck. Now, I don't want to understate it, right? Because there is no Mobius, it is definitely a deck that has a lot of like, I would imagine this is like a low rank killer, right? Because you have to understand the deck in order to beat the deck. And like, it's a big ask to understand a new card's play patterns pretty early in the existence of that new card. It's pretty normal, right? You don't just get to put a Mobius in your deck. You have to like actually do stuff. I get that. The play pattern, not ideal. I think anything that like encourages skipping all the early turns, it's very Sarah control-ish. That's not very fun. But when it comes to this card versus Sholau, I don't think there's a comparison. I had no good ways to try to beat Sholau for 4 weeks. In 4 days, I have more good ways to try to beat this card than I had for Sholau. Period.
Yeah, I think the thing about this deck, as in, I everything you say makes kind of a lot of sense for me as well. But like, I just want to say that like I understand the upsetness from the human perspective of playing against this deck, because it's like it's a bit like Black Panther Zola in Of the Past, right? It's like you just know it's coming. You just kind of know it's coming.
Let's do a little bit of housekeeping here. Moondragon came out. This is when I say housekeeping, I mean like this is I acknowledge I was wrong about this card. It's better than I thought. It turns out Bad Chamber still goes in ramp decks. If I was able to play those, and I hope I will be again soon, it's actually just like kind of a nice thing to have access to, because this is just a second chamber in the deck. You get like 8 to 10 power out of it, and you're like, oh, that's actually exactly what I want for my 2-drop. Because they play this on 2, you play a 3-on-3 that ramps you, you play a 5, a 6, and a 7. You're actually just straight up playing on curve the whole time. For some reason, I'm tunnel visioned on Doom 2099. Totally missed that. Moondragon does go in Doom 2099, of course, but the fact that it actually goes in a second deck makes it a significantly better card than I expected it to be. I've also seen it in Aurora-ish decks. Again, another thing I didn't really exactly have on my radar is like a thing that would be relevant in this metagame, but because of Jean Grey Cosmo, it kind of became a little relevant in this metagame. I think that Moondragon is a notably more versatile card than I expected it to be, and I would like to apologize to all the Moondragoners out there.
I mean, this card, the Aurora one actually is the most... I faded that as well, like in my mind. I wasn't even really thinking of the Aurora thing. But like that kind of just wants like stuff to play that synergizes with the endgame Aurora, right? And this
like it'll play Lizard.
Perfectly with that.
Right? Yeah.
I mean, like, you just want cheap cards that can like stack the Aurora buff, right? And this is one of the better ones that they've printed in a while. So yeah, pretty interesting card. Pretty good, actually. Better than I thought, for sure.
Magus, I think, was worse than I thought, and I thought it was bad. So like, I don't know. I've seen the things where it's like I'll use it for a turn 5 skip deck, and it'll copy Claw and Iron Man in my deck. And it's like, I buy that. I think you can do that. It only does that. It has done absolutely nothing else. It has only ever shown up in these like tier 2, tier 2.5, big baby moon girl ass decks. That's it. The only place I've seen the card. I lied. I've also seen people playing it in Star-Lord, where I am sure it is an integral part of the win condition there. I'm sure it's really helping there. I'm sure it's just like a crucial, irreplaceable piece of that deck. I don't know. It's fine. It's a fine card. I do think that the Star-Lord use case is pretty funny. It's not actually good, but like it's just like a pretty funny thing that like you could just do that there. I think largely the biggest thing that this card does is the skip 5 stuff with like various forms of like Moon Girl or Warlock or She-Hulk or whatever. And outside of that, I've seen it do literal nothing that's good.
Yeah, I mean, I was trying to recall what I said last week about this card, because I wasn't too high on this as well. And I remember then you mentioned that point, and then I remembered that like I said that like people will probably be playing the Star-Lord stuff first, then they will look at this as like a backup or like something that fits in the Star-Lord deck. But then at the end of the day, you probably like, now we've seen that we actually don't really need this card at all. This card, the problem with this card is also the fact that like it's a bit too random for me. Like it's just, you could literally just lose the game if you copy the wrong thing, right? Like, can you imagine you just skip the whole turn and then it's a whiff? Yeah, no, probably not fantastic.
I've also seen people pitching like, oh, we'll fix it by make it counting the energy of the whole game. And it's like, that seems really bad, because if you like draw the card that's like expensive in your deck, then it doesn't do anything. Like, it's like you would have to make it like here's the wording I think you'd want to put on it if it was whole game, would be like highest first and then descending lower, right? So like if you don't have a 6 in hand, you get a 5, and it's just like, it's like, yeah, I don't think you can do that
on a text box. And like I already messed up the first card's text, so let's just not make more confusing text for card gamers that don't read, which is many of us.
All right, so like this is just like a blunt question. How real is this Star-Lord stuff? Because I feel like there's a 30% chance this deck is really busted. A 30% chance-ish that this deck is totally fine. And like a 40% chance that this deck will have like a 45% win rate in 2 weeks.
So this deck reminds me a lot of, okay, so it's not exactly the same thing, but if you think about it, it's actually quite like the same thing. Like in the past, there was the OG like Sandman Doom Odin deck of the original, like just play one card a turn, right? This is very similar in that like it kind of just after a certain turn does only one or two very specific things, right? Like you play the Star Lord, you duplicate the effect, then your final turn can be like Fing Fang Foom, Double Aliyah, blah blah blah. Like it's just it's just two things, you know. So I feel like this deck is very face up. Like I mentioned a bit earlier that it has very like high upsetness factor. Also because it's very face up. Like you just know that you're gonna get a liar, you're gonna get Fing Fan Foom and stuff like that. You just know what's gonna happen. So it's upsetting if you cannot beat that. But at the same time, the setup to get to that end state is very, very beatable. Like you mentioned, right? People playing like weird, not so good Cosmo Gene decks, and it kind of also beats this.
It doesn't
I feel like
kinda. I want to be super clear about this.
okay,
I
will
am
beat
literally 0% into that. Like I have
Okay,
never
it
ever
will
beaten it.
beat this. So the thing about this deck is it's just like the new toy. It's like the new toy, and then the new toy is actually relatively easy to play. It's very like, oh, I know how I'm gonna end the game regardless of what you do. It's just whether you can beat it. If I see the Cosmo, maybe I just die. You know, that kind of thing. This deck, I don't deny that its simplicity is also its strength. But at the same time, its simplicity is also its downfall because there's like how many cards in this game that actually counter this? It's really a lot, by the way. Like
I
really,
think
really
it's
a
like
lot.
4 or 5 legitimate counters.
But they go in many decks.
Yes.
That's the thing.
Yeah. I think that the biggest thing that people miss about this card, well, there's two. The first is you treat it like Mr. Negative. You're not staying against Mr. Negative when they play Mr. Negative and Jane Foster. Stop staying. Stop staying when your opponent plays this card into Arnim Zola Grandmaster. Stop it. Cut it out. You're not, it doesn't matter what it is. Stop doing it. You're going to get like a Lyeth Fin Fang Foomed or whatever. Stop. Right? The range is too large. Like, do not bother. All right? If they've got 22 energy on the final turn of the game, stop. you do
know how
not
people think that they actually can beat that. Like you'll be surprised. Like no, the example is just literally what triggered this like laughter because negative into Jane Foster, they will stay, I promise you. And that's why they will stay into 22 energy thinking, oh, they might have whiffed in my 12 card deck. My 12 card deck with 22 energy might have whiffed.
They might have. But the other thing I want to bring up here is you need to understand that you don't beat this deck on turn 6. People are used to beating decks in Marvel Snap on turn 6. They're used to, this is why like the Techpocalypse was the way it was. This is all like, you don't beat this deck on turn 6. You don't rug pull this deck. You don't blow up their magic. You don't like, oh, I'm going to beat this deck on turn 6 by like Shang-Chiing them into a, like, you don't do that. You beat this deck on turn 5. You beat this deck by saying that they spent all of their entire time playing this deck to only be able to play one card on turn 6. If they have to play one card on turn 6, they lose the game against anything that is halfway competent as a mid-range deck. And I'm just going to run through a couple examples of like how we make this happen. Daredevil with a Cosmo. Boom. Done. Take priority and then Cosmic Ghost Rider, the guy that they're going to copy. It's literally, if you just play like a normal Batroc deck and you're like, Batroc, Sam Wilson, Craven, oh, I have priority, I'm doing stuff. They're not doing anything because they're skipping every turn. They've skipped every turn. You Cosmic Ghost Rider the Star-Lord. Okay, congratulations. You had 8 energy on turn 5. You used it to play an Arnim Zola and a Grandmaster, both of which didn't give you any energy on turn 6 and you lose the game. Like that, there's so much of that. The baseline stuff is even like easier, right? Supergiant, you don't have a turn 5. Cool. You have to play normal energy on turn 6. Like, there's just all of this stuff that is like very meaningful, but none of it is stuff that beats this on turn 6. You beat this on turn 5. That is when you beat this deck. And that is when they beat you, by the way. Because if you're going to be able to play like this is why these two are tied together. If you have to respect them and retreat when they do their combo, they have to respect you and retreat when they don't. So all you have to do is play just the world's most normal-ass mid-range deck with one of these counters in there. And you are going, as long as you are doing the thing that you're doing and they're doing the thing that they're doing, you are going to win.
I have this very sneaky suspicion, and I might be correct on this, that a lot of these like high elo grinder, like top 10, top 25 players, they are loving this meta because it's so beatable compared to trying to figure out the Xiaolao stuff. Like the Xiaolao stuff, like it's the same group of high level players, right? But it took like way longer to
He
figure
had
that one out.
nothing. First week of Xiaolao, it was just, oh my god. Oh my god. Like, what am I supposed to do about this? And then it wasn't like, oh, this is the most busted thing ever. It's just like, this is clearly the best thing, and I don't know what I'm supposed to do to make it not the best thing. Where this guy's like more obviously busted, but I know exactly what I'm supposed to do to make him not work. I can figure this one out. So Supergiant, that's a pretty baseline one. It evolved out of a reaction to the Show Lao kind of things. It got a lot better post Show Lao nerf because before Show Lao got nerfed, it was like, all right, well, I did all my Supergiant stuff, and then they still just played like a guy that's bigger than my Ronin. But now Show Lao is no longer guaranteed to be bigger than your Ronin, so it's like a much more functional, winnable matchup. This is a deck that was really good at doing like face down Cosmos and face down Negasonics and face down Shadow Kings against the Show Lao deck. It is now good at doing face down Cosmos, face down Negasonics. Shadow King's not relevant at all. I almost want to cut it from the deck. But it just also manages to massively disrupt the turn 5, which is the crucial turn of the Star-Lord deck. It's the first counter I saw people playing, and it makes sense, right? Like, it's the obvious one. But I'm not actually sure that it's the best one. It's just good. It's got multiple ways to deal with what this deck is outputting. You can either guess correctly on the Cosmo or just play the card Supergiant that turns off the whole thing entirely. There are still 50-50s that a good Star-Lord player has access to. If they get priority, they have Alioths on the final turn of the game. If they have a Luna Snow, just a little more energy to play more stuff, allows them to do things like face down Arnim Zolas that you think you need to Negasonic, but you actually need to Cosmo. Those kind of bluffs are pretty important for the matchup coming from both sides. But largely, I would say this is a deck that is at least 50-50 against the Star-Lord decks, if not stronger.
Yeah, Supergiant to me. Okay, so I think your points are like some of the things I also wanted to cover, but like, I think the main thing I want to cover when it comes to Supergiant is that this card is always better. I'm not saying it's always good, but it's always better in metas whereby the final turns after the Supergiant are very linear. Like everyone knows what the final turns are because when it comes to Supergiant, like you need to predict correctly, right? So if there's less variations to predict, it's a lot easier to make the right calls on what is face down. So this card always sees a bit more like light of day when like the final turns of the meta are very standard, which is basically right now.
Now, I may be holding a cat, but I think a dog is going to be Star-Lord's biggest op here. Cosmo is obviously a really important part of beating this card. And there are a couple different ways to facilitate it. Like, we talked already about the Jean Grey stuff. We talked about the Supergiant stuff. But really, just like a lot of decks are just, as long as you can target the Cosmo, they're not going to be doing anything too stupid. The best ways for that deck to guarantee a win are to get to like about 11 energy. And that gives them access to Juggernaut Fin Fang Foom on the final turn of the game, which is really good. But you can also do something like much stronger, but that's like the floor, right? The floor is like you get to 11 energy, you're probably winning the game. That's going to be fine, right? So Cosmo decks right now, there are a couple of different ones. Baseline, I think the Jean Grey Cosmo stuff, which is both Aurora and Spectrum, either one of them, you're probably putting them in a dumpster. Like genuinely, you're body bagging the matchup whenever you do that. The second one is Batroc, which can be a Supergiant deck, but what happened was basically Ika did it as a Supergiant deck, and a bunch of us started playing it. And it was like, okay, this is cool, but do we actually need the Supergiant to win this matchup? And so Stefan replaced the Supergiant with a Daredevil. And it turns out, because Supergiant has like some negative synergies, right? You don't get as many points or as many movable things if you don't have a turn 5. You want to be able to move your stuff. You want to be able to have like your Hydra Stomper there. You want to have stuff face up on the board. And so it turns out you can just like play Daredevil Cosmo. And it's like, oh, well, they're playing an Arnim Zola and I have priority. So it just doesn't happen. Like, oh, they're playing a Grandmaster and a, they're going to get maybe 1 proc out of it, but I can beat 1 proc, right? Because this deck is good against Juggernaut. Largely, those are the shapes that I've seen. I think the Batroc deck is like, it's not like, North Korean election levels of margin of victory, but it's pretty favored. And if you play Jean Grey Cosmo, it is genuinely like, it's 100-0. It's actual 100-0 if you pull that off.
Yeah, I mean, the fact that there is like a deck that exists that can have, like as you say, 100% win rate versus so-called the top deck of the meta right now already means that this deck is eventually gonna, I mean, maybe 2 weeks, less than 2 weeks, is probably gonna fade into Oblivion without nerfs, which is very interesting because normally when a top deck fades into Oblivion, there's like nerfs involved, right? This could be a top deck that just fades without nerfs, which is very interesting to see. Because like
around because you have to do like some really like, okay, if it was only Jean Grey Cosmo, I'd be like, that's fine. The 100-0, they got to go out of their way. Yeah, the problem is you lose to the Batroc decks. I'm pretty sure you lose to any mid-range deck that's playing like Cosmic Ghost Rider. I'm not positive, but I'm like pretty sure that if you don't have priority and they CGR you, you just die. Like that's how it
we are
feels.
kind of already like listing stuff that the deck loses to a lot of the time without thinking of nerfs, right? Because normally at this point we'll be like, oh, how do we nerf this card so that we can see a change in the meta? We know you guys know we always say this kind of stuff, but like we haven't even mentioned how do we nerf this because we don't really think, I don't really think there really is a need, right? This card probably just fades when new cards get printed, which is like every week. So
I think it's possible they have to nerf it if this stuff is too hard for like the player base to grasp as a whole. Because I will
Cosmo's
say
not Cosmo's not a
but it's not just Cosmo, right? Like you need other stuff with the Cosmo. You need to target the Cosmo, right? Of course. That's hard, right? Like it's not just you can't just play the card Cosmo. You have to do other stuff too, right? Like it's not like Mobius where you're like, I know how to solve that. It's like you have to engage in the game. And this is a game people play on the toilet. And you got to balance for people who play on the toilet, right? Like I wouldn't be shocked if they're like, we got to take 2 power off this card. But I see people talking about like, I see people talking about like, take away the ability for it to gain power. Like, what, you take 5 points power off this card? What are we talking about here? Like,
that's a lot, man.
I don't want to, again, I really don't want to overstate my case here. This card is beatable. That doesn't mean it's healthy, right? It might be unhealthy that we have to warp our decks in this way to beat it. Or it would be if there weren't like 5 different ways to do it. But I totally understand that it doesn't feel good to have to prepare for a deck in order to actually have a good matchup into it. I get that. It's not a play pattern people like, and it is valid to want the card nerfed because it sucks. The mirrors, by the way, are dire. They are really ass. They are not fun. I'm not going to sit here. I won't hold you about that. Like that, they are bad.
True.
There are plenty of play pattern reasons to dislike this card, and it certainly seems that the power level is there to make it strong. But it's also just like extremely beatable. Extremely beatable. You can do it. I promise you. Which brings us to the last topic, which is the show comp. I think largely I have a habit of downplaying how busted a card is. And I don't think I'm wrong about this. I think I'm usually right about it. Like a card that in Marvel Snap is better than every other option is usually like 2 points better than every other option and not like 10 points better than every other option. When you go back through the history of Marvel Snap, it's pretty rare to see a card or even a deck that needed more than like 5 points taken out of the package. Like genuinely, it's pretty rare to see that. And that's usually not dedicated to one card. It's usually like split across multiple cards the way it was with Shou Lao. Very, very reasonable way to approach this. I bring this up to say that I think I downplayed Shou Lao in the sense that, like, I don't know how much of a problem this is. I think he's less of a problem than people are saying. And here we are a month later, and he lost 2 points of power, and the rest of his deck lost about 3. And he seems totally fine. And it's like, I don't think I was wrong, but even I didn't expect it to be this. I didn't expect to be this right about it. You know what I mean? Like,
Okay.
I felt like there was a very real possibility they didn't nerf him enough. I felt like, this is still like a pretty strong card. It's doing like some pretty powerful stuff. It's still probably one of the best mid-range things, and it kind of is. But this guy was really just 2 points of power off, and I was like, what if we also got rid of his Merlin synergy? Because you remember when I proposed the nerf to this guy, I was like 5/6, no spells. And now I think that if they did that, it would be dead. Like, it would be dead. And I'm the downplaying guy. I'm the guy who's like, this guy isn't that busted. You don't, like, people were talking about 5/6 plus 2.
Yeah,
like,
that's way too much.
It almost like what I'm getting at here is like, I've almost been polarized to a point where it's like, I should downplay these cards more. I should be like, these cards are only 1 point of power off. I should have been like, yeah, 5/7 show. That would have been fine. Like, I don't know. Like, I think there's this thing where it's like, when a deck is the best option, people think it's the best option by a mile. But it's usually the best option by like 3 points. It's usually like what makes it the best option is like 3 points of power. Something in that range. And if you take away those 3 points, it suddenly just becomes one of the boys, Bunch of stuff here. And
I think,
what do you think?
No, I just want to say that I think that, like, what makes a best deck in Marvel Snap, like you said, right, it's a few things, and this is a good conclusion to the entire episode also, because, like, when we talked about the current so-called like new best thing, which is the Star-Lord deck, right? Like, it's powerful, it's a lot of points. Yes, that's one of the criteria you gotta meet when you be a good best Marvel Snap deck. But in terms of the flexibility of point allocation, I think is one thing that this deck has a lot less than the Shao-Lao one. Flexibility of point allocation plus like ease of curving and ease of like drawing well, drawing bad, that kind of thing. I feel like with the Shao-Lao deck, it was so easy to just weave the card into like many shells, right? Like, even now in its nerf state, we are talking about it being good in mid-range decks as like a final boss option, because you literally just play cards.
Yeah, I think it's very possible there's like a Jean Grey Cosmo Shao-Lao deck, or like
yeah, I mean, as long as you play 2 cards a turn, you can make it work, right?
I think it's like, super possible.
Yeah, because that's the thing. You see, the criteria for Shao-Lao to be a good card is you play multiple cards a turn, and that's so easy to achieve in this game with like so many combinations of like multiple cards a turn, like in the game, So the condition for Shao-Lao to be good was always and is always easy. It's just that whether like the combinations of those cards pair well with the current meta. And I think, like you said, there is still definitely a good chance that like a Cosmo plus X into Shao-Lao turn is like something that's powerful enough to beat this said Star-Lord deck.
And I bring up the comp specifically because it's like, I'm captain down player, right? Like, I do that. And I don't want you to like I think it's valid to like look at my track record and say, okay, I'll take Cam with a grain of salt. He never thinks these things are that broken week 1, right? He never thinks these things are that broken. But at the same time, it does sort of feel like, even if you think the thing is broken and I think the thing isn't broken, I'm probably closer to right. Like, you probably think it's way more broken than it is, and I think it's like a little less broken than it is. You know what I mean? Like, you not being you literally, but like the figurative person here.
No, but actually the thing is, I think I agree with you on this, because like I've played card games for like years, right? Like I tend to be a bit more tolerant when it comes to like powerful things, because I see the possibilities to overpower with the powerful thing, So I'm also a bit of like Captain Down player 2.0 as well, because like I know there are options, but sometimes I also forget that like these options might not be as easy to achieve for everyone, or even for myself, might not be as easily achievable. It's just that like the idea that we think that there's always an option because we've played card games for a bit.
And I think the thing with Shou-Lao, though, I don't think at any point I was like, there are decks that beat this. I was like, there are decks that are about this good at doing similar things. And then those decks adopted Shou-Lao and got better, like the Iris deck, right? But I was never like, oh, I've got a counter. That never was a thing I had. And that's partly because this deck is a different kind of deck. Much more combo than a Sholau deck. But yeah, I got that, right? It's partly because Super Adaptoid mega sucks. There's a bunch of reasons, right? Like, I would love to have a good matchup by putting Super Adaptoid in my deck. I didn't. It helped, but it didn't help enough. And that kind of stuff is like, there weren't answers to Sholau the way there's answers to this. This is a card that, like, I know what to do about. And I do think that in that context, people are going to compare these cards. And this card has a bigger output, but it's a worse card. I don't really know a better way to phrase it. The output is bigger, but they're not the same kind of card. But it's like comparing Mr. Negative and old Elsa Bloodstone. Elsa Bloodstone is better. Like, it is what it is. All right, y'all. Thank you so much for watching. As always, I've been not Lamby Series. He's been Yes Lamby Series. And he will take us out.
And I'm definitely not KMBest. But if you like this video, like, comment, and subscribe. And we'll see you guys in the next one. Bye-bye.